My name is Susan Minuk with the Canadian Jewish News. Joining me just ahead of the Toronto International Film Festival world premiere of The Survivor is acclaimed director Barry Levinson. Hi Barry, tell me about your childhood memory and why you wanted to tell this story.
Well, in childhood memory, about 1948 to 1949, I was a little kid, and I lived with my parents, my grandparents, and a man came to the door, and it turns out that he was my grandmother's brother. I never knew that she had a brother. She never talked about her brother. There was never any mention of a brother, and suddenly there he was. And so he stayed with us for a few weeks, and we had a small house, and they put him in my bedroom on a cot on the other side of the room. And one night I woke up, and he was yelling, and he was speaking some foreign language, and he was flailing about, and it would happen night after night after night. You know, I'm a little 5-year-old, I'd wake up, I don't understand what's going on, but something is happening in his sleep that was scaring him or upsetting him, and I don't know. And after 2 weeks, suddenly he left. He had moved to some other place in, I believe, Vineland, New Jersey or something like that. Then it's like cut to like 16 years later, and I'm sitting talking to my mother one day, and she said, well, you know, when Simca was in the concentration camp, and I went, what? And that was his name, and I said he was in the camp, and then suddenly I went, well, that's what he must have been doing in those nightmares in the bed on the other side of the room. He was reliving something, and what is that all about? Now you jump ahead all these many, many years, and I got a script that dealt with this true story of Harry Haft, who was in the camps and then ultimately survived the camps, and this, without going through the whole story. And that character, in a sense, suffers post-traumatic stress disorder. And then I'm thinking, well, that's really what Simca had. And then I thought, well, that's an interesting way to look at the subject. Is it the Holocaust in terms of the camps? Yes. But it's what happens afterwards. What happens as you go on with your life, and how do you live your life when there's the nightmares that still haunt you? And the post-traumatic stress disorder that we now know, and we can identify it, because in the past we would look at, well, if we don't see the wounds, so therefore you're okay. We can't see psychological wounds. And how do we adjust to that? And how do we get on to really have to fulfill our lives, in a sense? And that's why I thought it was a worthwhile story to look into.
You direct actor Ben Foster in a performance of brutal violence with subtle emotional nuance. Ben transforms into Harry Haft with remarkable weight shifts. What was it like to see such a complete physical and emotional transformation with this character?
Well, you know, I cast Ben when he was 17 in a film I did called Liberty Heights. And now we're many years later, and he's truly has turned into one of the great character actors. I mean, he does really lose himself in the role. It's not Ben Foster as. He just somehow totally embodies that character. And so I can't think of anybody else that could navigate what's necessary for this film.
What excites you most about developing these characters?
What excites me the most? I mean, what excites me the most is the whole thing. But the key to it all is the credibility of the characters, so that the audience can emotionally feel what these people are going through, and then to go on that journey. You know, God knows you have to have the story, and we do have this strong story, but the reliance on character behavior becomes essential, because if you don't believe it, then the whole piece collapses on itself. We have to believe in these characters and these relationships, and to feel as if they are as credible as could possibly be.
Were there any unexpected moments during filming?
Well, there's always unexpected moments. Or sometimes you create unexpected moments. Sometimes you say, well, what happens if we do this instead of that? What happens if we throw this in and we try this, and you see where that takes you? Mm-hmm. So I'd say probably most of the films I've done, I've tried to play within the boundaries of the script and see what else we might bring to the table.
What were the challenges in making this film?
Well, we're dealing with 3 time periods. We're dealing with the black and white aspect of the camps. We're dealing with the late 40s, early 50s, and we're dealing with the 60s. We got 3 time frames that take place over the course of it. So just the logistics of it all are fairly complicated. And also the growth of the characters over a period of time are obviously very important to it. So it's not simply a challenge of environment, but the challenge of characters as they continue to evolve over time.
When Harry Haft was preparing to fight Rocky Marciano, he was having flashbacks to the Death March, as though he knew he was going to be defeated. That seems both symbolic and intentional. Can you explain?
That's part of the struggle that he goes through. And one of the key moments in his life, is the Marciano fight becomes the essential thing. And he's thinking about the death marches, am I going to survive? So somehow those things start banging around in his head, that past and present are colliding with one another. Mm-hmm. And the emotional toll that it's taking through the course of that fight.
So you recreated the infamous work camp Jaworzno, where Harry trains and fights. Every detail of the camp was constructed, from the real concrete pillars and barbed wire enclosures to the 100-ton slag of coal that was brought in from Poland. Why was it so important to replicate this perfectly?
Well, I think we wanted to just make it look credible, even though it's only, maybe 25 minutes of the film. But you wanted to feel so credible that when we're flashing back to these things, you're going to buy it and be haunted by it, and as he is haunted by it. So you understand the level of trauma that he can't seem to put aside. So these are the building blocks.
To wrap up our time together, we know Harry Haft was a survivor. Do you think he was also a hero or a villain?
I think he was a human being that had to struggle with trauma and ultimately come out the other side. So he did things that he regretted and lived with that would eat away at him, and then he had certain accomplishments at the same time, and his mind was bouncing back and forth until he could sort of put it to rest and be able to just deal with his family, his relationships, etc., moving forward.
Such an important film, Barry. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
with the CJN. Shana Tova.
Thank you very much.